is outside or within the family, because they recognize they're stewards of it. They're not owners of it. Okay? Tends to keep doing the same thing over and over again, not learning from the past mistakes. The giver is not able to see that he is doing the same thing over and over, even in a different scenario. It's the truth. This is because he is so independent. The giver sees every situation as different and believes he is responding differently. He sees no pattern to his actions. The wounded giver believes it is weak to ask for help or admit he is not in control of the situation. He has an issue with trusting others to speak into his life. The healthy giver recognizes this DNA weakness. All right, the healthy giver goes, I have an issue with this. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for a giver to get to this place, because they're not good receivers. And continues to seek out help from others' giftings in order to not fall into this trap. There is wisdom in the counsel of many. With givers, I tell them, you've got to submit to leadership in your life. You got to before you make a decision in this area, we got to find out if you're doing the same thing just in a different room. Just because you were in a different room wearing different clothes doesn't mean it's a different situation. All right? Because you can't recognize those things. All right? Tends to bend God's absolutes. When it comes to God's absolutes, the giver makes allowances, concessions, and compromises for as long as it is necessary. The wounded giver will tend to have greasy grace beliefs, and they try to avoid confrontation as much as possible. The healthy giver uses his creativity to challenge the mainline beliefs, but in the end will submit to God's absolutes. Can you tell me what God's absolutes are? What's an absolute that God has?
Commandments.
Huh?
Commandments.
Commandments. Well, what's one of them? What's one of the absolutes?
Don't murder.
Huh?
Don't murder.
Don't murder. Okay. What's the biggest absolute that he has? How do you get to heaven?
Love your God.
Huh?
Love your God.
How do you get to heaven? Through works or through faith in Christ? It's an absolute. The only thing way you can be forgiven by sin is by receiving Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's an absolute. He's the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me. It's an absolute. And so they tend to be a little bit greasy when it comes to the whole absolute thing, because they don't want to confront. Okay? But the healthy one will submit to God's, even though they want to have that, they'll submit to God's absolutes. They'll submit to it, the healthy one. Tends to finesse people and God alike. Fine. The giver seems to gain incredible returns on investment. He can turn 5 cents into $5 because the giver's ability is to work, persuade, and motivate others to make money. He thinks he can do the same with God. The wounded giver manipulates God in the area of giving and receiving. He believes if he gives, then God must give him a better return. If I give you $5, Lord, you better give me $500. All right, I'm giving it.
Wow, that's weird. That's weird.
I have met, I don't know how many people that when they give, they give and they're saying, man, I have given $100 and God hasn't given me back 1,000. And he better give me back 1,000 or else I'm just not going to trust him anymore. I've seen it, and I've seen them get offended with God because he didn't bless them in the way that they expected. And they walk away with great offense. I've seen it. I've seen it. Actually, I've seen it in our own fellowship. And so you can't manipulate God into doing something. There's seed, time, and harvest. You got to let God work the plan. You got to trust the process, right, amen? And the wounded giver the healthy giver recognizes that his wealth comes from the Lord. He gives in proportion to his gratitude for God's blessing, not as a gift of obedience. All right? In other words, they give out of proportion because of Thanksgiving, not because they just have to be obedient to give. I got to tithe because that's the absolute, and I've got to do it. They do it because they have a great joy in what they do. All right? That's the healthy. Greatest strength, sustained ideological tension without bringing into closure. Pragmatic approach enables him to be a peacemaker.
Pragmatic meaning.
Huh?
Pragmatic meaning.
Pragmatic is always doing the same thing. Okay. Well, he will bring peace on a certain position within the staff without compromise. The wounded giver may be casual and indifferent to the rivaling staff and choose to not engage his peacemaking skills. All right? The healthy giver will speak to the problem from an abstract view to cause others to see what they were unable to see because of their own dogma. All right? It's good to have a giver on your board because they'll bring a view, a healthy giver. Not a wounded one, but a healthy giver, because they will bring a view that you may not be able to see. Okay? Any questions concerning the giver? All right. Genesis 1:20, verse 33, the fifth day of creation. And God said, let the waters teem with living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea and everything living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning the fifth day. All right? Where is the giver in that? Be fruitful and multiply. Absolutely. The diversity of creatures in the sea and air point to the diversity of interest in life for the giver. There is no limit to where the giver's gifting can be used effectively. There is no limit to where the giver can make money. The giver likes to be in many different projects at the same time. This is the first day God created life in the blood. Life and health issues are central to the giver. Do you know what the number one occupation for a giver is? Nursing. There's more givers in the caretaking community than any of the other gifts. Isn't that amazing? Where was I at? Life and health issues are central to the giver. He is concerned about the preservation of life and the quality of life. His focus on being prepared for old age. There is a need for safety. They want to feel safe. All right? That's the reason they take care of the money. They want to be able to have a future. All the original birds and sea creatures have passed on. What we see now is the reproduction of the generations. The things a giver does, whether good or bad, are more apt to be carried on and multiplied in the physical and spiritual seed. Most importantly, the giver has the spiritual authority to protect new birth and demonic attack on new programs in the church. The giver has the highest authority to intercede during its infancy, 4 to 8 weeks. The giver's authority is to nurture, protect, and guard the new program in the early stages. It is not necessary to protect that program in its whole life, just getting it started. So if the giver has the authority as far as maintaining things for generations, if they're healthy, they'll produce good fruit. If they're unhealthy, what will the next generation have? It'll be unhealthy. For not just that generation, but generations after generations after generations, because that is the gifting in their life, is generational. So if they're wounded, a wounded giver, generationally, it'll pass on, pass on, pass on. All right? That's why it is important that a giver is healthy. All right? God requires the response of the giver to be holiness. The downfall of the giver can be the casualness in holiness, because God designed the giver to be independent of others. Did you hear what I said?
Yes.
Designed them to be what? Independent of others. The giver's temptation is to be independent of God as well. His independent, self-reliant bent is a constant battle. The wounded giver is a religious giver. All right? The religious giver believes that the world owes him something based on his hard work. Take Cain's offering, for instance. He determined the type of worship he would give and thought God ought to be pleased with it because it was good. But God required obedience over the sacrifice. The wounded giver maintains a form of religion but lacks the relationship. He does the right thing, like having a form of godliness, but lacks the power thereof because he lacks the relational part. The relational giver sees it differently. He acknowledges God's divine provision. He is grateful for the provision of God he didn't see coming, or that God gave abundantly more than what the giver expected. This level of gratitude is pivotal in the giver's relationship with God, for it does not come easily to the giver. The giver must master this foundational truth in order to enter this spiritual birthright God longs for the giver to embrace. The giver doesn't need any of the other gifts. This is why it was hard for me to relate to the giver. All right? They don't need any of the other gifts. They're fine being by themselves. Healthy ones recognize they need the other gifts. Wounded, they tend to be the worst islander of them all. All right? Since this is in the right order, two provisions explode from God's kingdom. The first change is to the giver's time. The giver freely enters into intercession and worship, celebrating with his emotions his relationship with the Most High God. His worship and intercession brings the authority to release life-giving generational blessing into the family line. And when the giver's security is in God, extravagant anointing and generational blessing will pursue the giver and passes him going on to the next generation. He will be like Abraham, who was called the friend of God. Isn't that awesome? The second explosion is divine provision of resources used for the kingdom purpose. When the giver gives out of what is left over, what he does not have he meets needs on earth, but fails to obtain generational blessing and honor of the Lord. What the giver is not looking for, God's will, but charting his own course, doing the things that come naturally to him, it is but a small step to overtly disobey God. In Genesis 35, God calls Jacob to live in Bethel. It was a place where God met him with the ladder of the angels, but it was not a good place for raising the sheep. Jacob went briefly, renewed covenant with God, but then he, what? Left. Shortly afterwards, his wife died, giving birth to Benjamin. The relational giver is full of faith, knowing and believing the will of God to bring about obedience. He does not have access to by his own ability and resources. The relational giver allows God to supernaturally, sovereignly move in and for him. He will have to make a choice to either look to self for security or look to God for it. Does any of that make sense? Because of a lot of words. I'm trying to bust through it. It's a lot of words. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Anybody concerning the creation gift there? All right. To letters to the church in Revelations, to the church of Sardis. The angel of the church to Sardis write, these are the words of him who holds the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. I know your deeds. You have a reputation of being alive, but you are dead. Remember we talked about having the appearance on the outside, but dead spiritually on the inside, right? Wake up, strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have found your deeds unfinished in the sight of my God. Remember therefore what you have received and heard, hold it fast and repent. But if you do not wake up, I will come like a thief, and you will not know at what time I will come to you. Yet you have a few people in Sardis who have not soiled their clothes. It's a pretty serious statement. They will walk with me, dressed in white, for they are worthy. The one who is victorious will, like them, be dressed in white. I will never blot out the name of that person from the book of life, but will acknowledge that name before my Father and his angels. Whoever has ears to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Application. Rarely is the giver overly evil. His reputation is built on doing the right things. However, he is not in pursuit. He is not in pursuit of holiness. Righteous actions are a substitute for personal righteousness. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. In Sardis, they are cautioned to remember what they received and heard. It is about his heart attitude of self-reliance versus dressed in the humble garments of God and righteous provision. If I was to liken the giver is this person. If you take the candelabra, all right, there's how many lights? How many channels? Huh?
In the menorah?
Yes.
7.
There's 7. Isn't it interesting that there's 7 gifts? Each one of those represents one of the gifts.
7 spirits of God.
The giver gift is the one right in the middle.
Yep.
Every one of the other gifts needs
Which
each
they
other.
call the servant candle, actually.
Huh?
They call that the servant candle or the shemesh.
It is right in the middle. It doesn't need anything. It doesn't need anyone. But all the other gifts need each other.
But it gives light to the others.
Yes, it gives light out. So what happens is the relationship, they don't need anybody else. And that's why it was very difficult for me to relate to this, because I'm in need of everybody around me. And it was very difficult to pull from that, saying, what does it mean to not have to have this and be in this situation? All right? Very different for me. That's why it's number 5 in there. It's right in the middle day of creation, the whole 9 yards. Pretty amazing, all right? When do we take break for lunch?
When your
Soon as
wife
Lori
gets
gets
here
here.
with lunch.
Ooh,
I'll text her.
she's wearing me out, man. We're doing pretty good. I'm on number 6.
Woot woot.
How much time do we have still?
Wootan.
No.
It's only 11:30.
Well, we dismiss at 2.
Oh, 2.
So I have 2.5 hours. I caught up some time on that
Yeah,
one.
it was good.
All right. I was ripping
Go,
through
Lou,
it,
go.
messing
Go,
up every
Lou,
word
go.
I possibly could, trying to rip through that thing.
Hey, you know, on the giver, I do have a comment though.
Yes.
That sometimes we overlook the giver as an actual gift, like that gift of giving.
Yeah.
We overlook that. It's every bit as much a ministry for
It is.
those that are givers as it is if you're a worship leader or if you're a youth pastor, or because it comes with very specific calling and giftings and strengths that you've just described.
Right.
And a lot of times we just overlook them as being, oh, that guy's generous or that guy's generous. But in actuality, he's a very intricate and important part of the overall ministry in the body of Christ.
And that is correct, because they bring a balance to all the other gifts, actually. And also, one of the things that we tend to do is because they are not front people, we don't see them as a gift. We just see them as somebody that's what they're doing. Like nurses, they don't draw attention to themselves. They always bring it back to the doctor. They always give it back to the doctor. They always divert the authority to the others, but yet they're the first ones to be there when there's a problem. And it's the same thing with a healthy giver in a church. They're the very first ones to show up to help out the problem because they want that to be taken care of. It's a very valuable gift. I had a person in my ministry a long time ago, because I was raised in ministry that people that have money are supposed to be there for you, right, to help you in the ministry. So I'd always call people and say, listen, I'm going on a mission trip, this is how much money I need, but can you do it? They say yes, and I would just take advantage of that. Well, one day I had to repent. God rebuked me and said, you are manipulating these people and you better do something about it. So I called up every one of them and I repented and I said, listen, I am so sorry, will you forgive me? And begin to build a relationship with them instead of just asking for finances. Because just because they can give it doesn't mean they should. Or you should take advantage of it. In the same way that if you have that gifting and you go to a giver and you ask for money, you need to be prayerful about that so that you don't manipulate them, because they will come to a place of resenting it and they will shut down, not just in your ministry, but they'll shut down every ministry in their life.
That's so true.
What I kind of have noticed in what we've gone through so far is that, like, the giver and the exhorter are kind of like the glue that the extreme gifts. It helps kind of bind everything together. They're kind of the flesh and the blood that kind of feeds those gifts all together and makes it cohesively work.
So, like, the giver is not really concerned so much about the message. They're really not. They're really concerned about the presence of God. They love worship. Givers love worship. They love prayer. They'd rather be in a 12-hour prayer meeting than to be in a teaching session. The only reason they're learning from the teaching is so that they can have greater worship and prayer. And that's the truth about a giver. Because they would rather be spending time in the presence of God than in the presence of people. And so in the same way, this is what I find interesting, because I've traveled around the world. I've seen, like, you have Asia, you have Europe, you have all these places. Each one of those has giftings also. Each nation has been given a gift as well. Like, America has a teaching gift. It's very much a teaching nation. We go to other cultures, we teach. You take like the Philippines, very much like a giver.
Yes, they are.
They're servants. They go and they serve all over the world. That's why I love being there. I relate to that culture very well because of my own gifting as an exhorter. Then you take Australia. Australia is the most evangelistic nation on the face of the earth. They go in, they plan a mission, they get it started, they leave with the people, and then they leave and they go start another one. That's Australia. That's what they do. But they got that from who? England, who colonized most of the world and then left.
Yeah, Australia was nothing but a bunch of convicts.
Yeah. That's why they're good exhorters.
Because they exiled them.
They kicked all the exhorters out of England.
All the evangelists.
All of it. They kicked them all out and put them in Australia.
That's right.
All right. Anyways, it's pretty interesting stuff. All right. So did you get something out of Giver then?
Yes.
Yeah. It took me like 3 days to work on Giver. I had to really put a lot of thought in that because it's a harder gift for me to relate to because I rely so much on other people around me. It's not even funny. All right. Number 6, ruler, leader. This is where everybody gets bored. Everyone gets bored. They're like, can we not get through this? I want it done. I talked like for 1 hour and everybody was done with ruler, leader. All right, lesson 6, page 39, ruler, leader. If it is to lead, do it with what? Diligently, right? Ruler, leader. An effective administrator who takes the abstract concepts of the visionary and plans incremental steps to bring it about, releases a generational blessing in dominion. And the characters are over here that you can study. Behavioral traits. One of the easiest to identify has the ability. It implemented the given vision. The ruler leader is able to break down a vision in steps that are effective and manageable. I am not that person.
That's right.
I can be that person, but I'm typically not that person.
And we still love you.
When a wounded ruler leader is not sure his steps will be received and implemented, and he will not get involved. Your loyalty to back his plan is essential to him. He may be pushy, but the plan about the plan until you either do it or he tries or he tires of the effort and gets offended and leaves. He will also tend to micromanage the vision. The healthy ruler leader is willing to lead and work right alongside the team. Once the vision is laid out, the ruler leader trusts those he has asked to do the work. Can be mistaken for a servant gift because both are busy bees and like it that way. Unlike the servant, the ruler leader is capable of saying no. The servant cannot say no. It's the most difficult thing for a servant to do is to say no. The wounded ruler leader feels his presence is enough support. He will gladly throw in his 2 cents, but not his 2 hands. This is what we were talking about the other night. They got something to say, but they're not going to do anything about it. He has the ability to look like he is working without doing a thing. It's one of my favorite things in the world to watch a wounded ruler leader. They'll like pick up this, and they'll be like telling you, what you need to do is that and that and that, because I'm really busy. I got this in my hand. Watch me. I'm going to walk around for 3 hours with this in my hand, but I'm not going to really do anything. Except for telling you what you need to do with what you're handling. Yay! The healthy ruler leader is like the son who says no, but does it in the end. What do you think? There is a man who had 2 sons. He went to the first one and said, "Son, go and work today in the vineyard." "I will not," he answered. But later he changed his mind and went. Then the father went to the other son and said the same thing, and he answered, "I will, sir," but he did not go. Which of the 2 did what his father wanted? The first, they answered, the ruler leader will obey the Lord. In other words, they'll say, "No, I'm not going to do it," but then they go and do it. All right? Time management skills are very good. The ruler leader is only as busy as he wants to be. The ruler leader is busy for busy's sake, which is where his worth is derived. He will be quick to remind everyone how much work the ruler leader does, and he could possibly become resentful. They're the only ones that ever work. No one else does any work but them, because they're super awesome. And the healthy ruler leader is able to set boundaries in his personal and professional life without becoming resentful. All right? Prefers to be under constant pressure and deadlines. He believes that people will do their very best work under pressure. So oftentimes the ruler will create a work environment that is run with pressure. Without pressure and deadlines, the ruler leader feels lazy and becomes easily distracted. He believes that people will do their best work under pressure. So often the ruler leader will create a work environment with pressure. The wounded ruler leader will never be satisfied and will drive those that are around him crazy with pressured deadlines.
I want to warehouse open on Wednesday. Just kidding.
The healthy ruler leader knows not just his own boundaries, but will respect the boundaries of others, and he will set reasonable deadlines. Has the ability to motivate and push people beyond what they even can believe they can do. The ruler leader is able to see potential in people that people aren't able to see in themselves. The wounded ruler leader can very easily become abusive when pushing people because not everyone thrives on the same pressure like a ruler. The wounded ruler leader expects the same driven performance from others that he expects out of himself. The healthy ruler leader sees people's potentials and will work alongside them at their pace, pushing them out of love, not performance. All right? It may seem to you at the time that they are trying to push you and you're feeling pressured. But a healthy ruler leader will push you just far enough and then stop, knowing that you are starting to become resentful. They'll recognize when you start to become resentful of what's going on. And they'll stop there and they'll walk alongside with you till the peace comes back into you again, and then they'll push you again. Okay? That's healthy. It's healthy. All right?
I've been there too.
In other words, they know how to push people, but they don't break them. All right? Has the ability, I already did that. If a ruler leader is a supportive position working under a visionary, it is imperative that the visionary back up the ruler leader when or if there is a problem. This is very important to listen to right here about a ruler leader. This is their breaking point right here. If there is a mistake or problem, the ruler leader and the visionary need to own the problem together.
Visionary meaning prophet.
Yeah.
Visionary leader. So it can be an exhorter, it can be a teacher, it can be somebody that carries the vision of the church, all right? The ruler leader tends to be the administrative role. All right? If the wounded ruler is thrown under the bus, he will become hurt. And it will be very difficult, or if you're Lori, throw him over the bus. It will be very difficult for him to trust again. He will just simply leave. The healthy ruler leader will be humble, handling the problem. He recognizes that the vision is more important than pride. He will either submit to serve or will step down to allow others to take over. He must guard his heart against offense. But also it is important that those that are visionaries to walk alongside them, to not abandon them. It is easy for a ruler leader to feel abandoned. And if they feel abandoned, they'll shut down. And any ministry that tries to help them, or they try to help after that, they will not help. They will not go back to that experience again. And it takes a lot to bring them back into health again. Some of them never ever make it. Never make it after that. Once they're broke, they won't. It's so difficult to regain that trust in them again. Trust is huge to a ruler leader. Loyalty is more valuable than competence. Loyalty to the ruler leader is most important. He will promote those that are loyal over those that have better ability and talent. And this is the truth with a ruler leader. Matter of fact, it is in my life that I see this also. Loyalty is more important to me than your ability. All right? The wounded ruler leader will demand the loyalty and will remove and replace even those that have known for years just to have loyalty. They'll demand it. If they don't get it, they'll walk in a room, they're like, the statement of like this: I've been in ministry for 5,000 years and you better respect me. No. I don't care about that. But they'll demand it. A wounded ruler leader will demand loyalty and respect. The healthy ruler leader has loyalty first and foremost on his mind. He will worry about building competency later, since competence can be taught, where loyalty is God-given. Bring it here, babe. Maybe Kevin can help you. She just had the surgery on her shoulder, so she can't open it. Need to micromanage. When given a task, due to the due date and the resources, the ruler leader will complete the job without outside management. The wounded ruler leader will rebel and shut down anything that even remotely looks like micromanagement. He hates feeling like he isn't trusted. They don't like being micromanaged. The healthy ruler leader will not rebel, but will communicate the need to be trusted to do the job. He will ask for clear expectations. Sounds like confrontation, right? You notice in a lot of this, when you're wounded, there's no confrontation. It's just ignore it and it'll go away. Healthy, confrontation. You can't have a relationship without confrontation. All right? Not into the blame game. The ruler leader will not blame self or others. The ruler leader The wounded ruler leader, when blamed, will not see that there is even a problem and will see it as a dismissal of loyalty. The wounded ruler leader may pack up and leave and take those that are loyal to him with him.
Division.
What does that sound like?
Jezebel.
Sounds like division again, right? The healthy ruler leader will come alongside to fix the mistake. He is safe to work under. He is willing to own your problem with you rather than finding fault with you. That's a health. No, I'm talking about a healthy one. Healthy. By design, the ruler leader is an empire builder. Empire building is not evil, but can be exploited or driven too far. However, the ruler leader is designed by God to look at anything with the eyes to make it bigger. Though he will often run ahead of the financial resources in order to buy land, build buildings, and enlarge programs, he does not have a welfare mentality.
Right.
But they will always push for the more. All right? They will always push for the more. They're never satisfied with less.
Yep.
All right? The wounded ruler leader will not care about the position the others are doing, i.e. board or elders. He will drive the program into the ground and simply move on, leaving smoldering mess. That's the wounded one. They don't care about your opinion. It's going to come. It's going to happen no matter what. It's going to happen. Pastor, I don't care what you say. We're going to do this. And if you don't want to do it, then I'll go somewhere and do it myself. And they'll leave behind a smoldering mess. The healthy ruler leader will not run ahead of God. As a matter of fact, the healthy ruler leader values God's counsel because he wants to build something that will last for generations. Independent without being malicious. The ruler leader will take ownership of his own problems and mistakes. He is not needy and will self-correct what is wrong. The wounded ruler leader may not get involved with the vision of winning the city for the Lord. It is not because he does not believe in taking the city. He wants to take the city for God, but he does not believe he needs other people to do it. All right? The healthy ruler will develop a relationship with a key individual from that group. Then the ruler leader will get involved with the vision of winning the city for the Lord. The truth is, while the ruler leader may not need others, the others need him. Oh, just laughing at myself. Positions, broken people where the best can be drawn out without allowing their brokenness to damage the vision. The ruler leader will position broken people to gain self-worth, loyalty, and competence. The wounded ruler leader will be task-oriented and will neglect the shepherding that is needed to correct and nurture that which is spiritually wrong. He is not oblivious to the need. He would just rather focus on the immediate objectives, task at hand. Take Nehemiah, for example. Nehemiah wanted to build the wall and deal with the spiritual nurturing afterwards. Nehemiah found himself in a situation where he had to stop right in the middle of the construction to deal with the sin of the wealthy exploits of the poor. Right? So, in the ruler leader, the wounded just sees the task. He doesn't care if you end up broken at the end of it. He doesn't care. Just as long as the task is done, we're good. He doesn't care about the sin in the church, doesn't care about anything else. I mean, we're going to build the biggest, baddest church in town. That's just how it's going to be. And they will drive it, and they don't care who they waste or leave behind them, as long as it's done. I've seen this in ministry before, where they've taken people and they put them in positions, and when they were used up and broken, they just abandoned them, took another person, put them in that position. And they would fire people in and out and in and out of the ministry. I mean, you would go to the ministry and they would have a worship leader and they were fantastic, right? But then you go back the next year and they got a different worship leader. And then you go back the next year and then they had a different worship leader. And then they got a different youth pastor, they've got a different administrator, they got a different everything else, because they would use up that person till they were dry. And when they were dry, they didn't nurture them anymore. They just threw them to the side and they just grabbed somebody else, put them in the position because they're always moving, always moving, always moving. It's about the pursuit. The healthy ruler leader will not be so task-oriented that he neglects his shepherding, correcting and nurturing that which is spiritually wrong. Seeing the end game is to see the broken healed. The healthy ruler leader attends to people over the principle. It takes longer, but it lasts for generations. All right? Tend to not be on the church board. The pastor does not recruit a ruler because, number one, the ruler is perceived to be too busy to be on the board. The pastor should ask him anyway because if he wants to do it, he will carve time out to do it and will do it well. Number two, the pastor wants ideological driven people on the board, but not everyone needs to be passionate about missions, children's ministry, etc. Even though the ruler has a real detailed visionary,
Has no real detailed visionary specialty of his own.
Yeah, thank you. Has desired to expand and to give knowledge on how to expand it will ensure a greater measure of success for the one with the vision. Number three, the ruler may have much carnality or sin in his life. There is wisdom to not place a compromised ruler on the board. Number four, the ruler will not volunteer to serve without knowing he is wanted in the position. It is an issue of loyalty, backing, and commitment to the team of the pastor. So should you have a pastor or a ruler leader on the board?
No. Mentally.
Yes.
Yes, you need to have a ruler leader on the board,
But not when they're wounded, though.
but not when they're wounded. No.
That's why I was
No.
thinking.
But they don't want to be on the board. You know why they don't want to be on the board? Because they tend to believe they don't need it. All right, so they have to be asked. There has to be that loyalty built in them. Natural tension between the ruler leader and the prophet on 3 accounts. The ruler leader and the prophet on 3 accounts. Number 1, the ruler leader is not into the real details. If the job is 80% done or functioning well, the ruler is happy. The prophet tends to focus on the 20% that isn't done, since he feels 100% of the details should be considered. 80% is being done, ruler leader, that's good, man, we're moving. Prophet, what happened to the other 20%? We need to get that made up right now, or let's just stop the whole program. Ruler leader doesn't care how things work. He just wants to go farther and faster. The prophet is excessive compulsive with the way, the why, the how does it work, and what makes it get there questions. In other words, the prophet never gets anything done.
I think you mean obsessive.
Yeah.
Unless they can figure out how it's all going to work. Once we figure out how it's worked, then we'll do it. Not going to happen. Issues of ethics and integrity. The prophet sees righteousness as central. The ruler is not biblically based, sees it as the ends justifies the means. So there's a conflict there. It is a good conflict. They need to learn how to work with one another.
Yeah.
Amen? Enjoy. That's why we celebrate each other's gifts. Are you about ready for lunch, honey? I'm going to break right here, and then we'll come back to 6 days of creation.